morning, friends. Welcome to another Spiritist Talk brought to you by the U.S. Spiritist Federation. This morning, we have the pleasure of have ANISIO RESEM with us, and he's going to have a very interesting conversation, and it's very appropriate that his topic is let's talk about the gospel. So, very interesting. Looking forward to our talk with ANISIO RESEM. Let's talk about a little bit about our ANISIO. So ANISIO is a co-founder and the current president of the Spiritist Society of San Diego. He has been active in the Spiritist movement for more than 25 years. Mr. RESEM has collaborated and studied at institutions like the Spiritist Federation of the state of São Paulo and the Allan Kardec Spiritist Center of Campinas, both in Brazil. He has studied and practiced mediumship within the Spiritist framework for more than 25 years. ANISIO has a degree in electrical engineering with specializations in business management and software engineering. ANISIO, welcome, and let's talk about the gospel.
Thank you, Glassy. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me.
And I'm very excited about the talk. Yeah, let's. So I'm gonna say our initial prayer, and then you will have the word, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you to all of our Spiritist friends for another opportunity brought to us by technology, brought to us by the inspiration and hard work of our spiritual friends. In a sense, also brought, shared amongst us in our very tiny efforts in which we do what we can in the best of our abilities to disseminate, to talk, and to exchange ideas about the gospel and about Jesus' teachings, and as enlightened by Spiritism. May we have a blessed discussion this morning, and may our minds and hearts be open to all the teachings that we will receive. So be it.
Thank you very much, Galacio. Thank you. Well, when Tanya asked me to have a conversation with you guys and have the inspiration that came to me was to maybe have a talk about the gospel, to discuss a little bit from a high level perspective what we think about the gospel, a few ideas around it, and what motivated this. If you think about this data is specifically for the United States, for America. Pew Research actually does some incredible analysis of religiosity in America, the landscape, and there's a nice report if you guys want to check it out. What's going on with the religiosity of America? I'm not sure about what's going on in Brazil, but this is specific to America, and younger generations, specifically now millennials, right, are pushing further away from traditional religion. This is a very intense demographic change where people are questioning, the structure of religion in general, and it seems to be a trend. And one of the things we should be capable of doing is understanding why things are the way they are, and question everything, and understand if you like, for instance, if you're born in a religious family, or if you have been a Spiritist for many years, or a Christian, whatever religion, maybe sometimes we get used to the teachings, we get comfortable, and we start thinking and operating on those frameworks, and we don't, because that has been for so long, we have been involved for so long, we sometimes stop thinking about that, and we take things for granted. And we're going to try to do that today. We're going to not take the gospel for granted, right, today, and talk a little bit about it. And first and foremost, let's discuss what are the principles of Spiritism. What are the fundamental principles that guide us in everything we do when it comes to Spiritist teachings, right? We can list 5 Spiritist principles. We can say that We believe in God, which is the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things, right? In the universe, right? We believe in evolution. We believe that we evolve. We have the law of progress that we're all bound to, no matter what. It's like a law of nature, like gravity or anything else. So we all evolve, either we want it or not. We're bound to this law. We believe the immortality of the soul. We believe humans are not just the body, the biology. They are actually souls, consciousness, spirits, as we call them, that are independent of the body. And as a consequence of the immortality of the soul, we also talk about the possibility of communication between spirits and incarnate ones, and the reincarnation, the principle of reincarnation, where we have many lives, right? And those two are consequences, maybe, of the immortality of the soul. In general, where we are in terms of understanding society, which is mostly based in science, right? Well, God is not something we will be able to prove through science, right? Because we would need experiments. We would need to understand all the laws of the universe to comprehend God scientifically, right? And that's not going to happen. We're not going to, in the foreseeable future, we're not going to have any experimentation that deals with galaxies. We're barely starting to do experimentation planet-wise and solar systems. To understand the whole system, the whole everything, we would need to understand all the laws. So God will stay as an obvious thing, right? God is obvious. Either you believe it because you just see the way the universe behaves around us, or you don't, and that's it. Evolution, I think, is much more clear right now in science. Science already understands that we evolve. We have the work of Darwin and all the biological evolution that we now understand that happened throughout time. And I think this is now something that connects pretty strong. Science and spiritism are pretty much connected in that regard. It's an idea that we all accept. The critical point right now is the immortality of the soul. I think we have a lot of indications right now in science that lead us to that indicates that soon science will bring an understanding of an extracorporeal consciousness. There are already lots of, it's not for today, we're not going to talk about that today, but there are a lot of indications, experiments in science that create doubts already about the need or the existence of another element. And this is going to be a tremendous impact when science finds the soul, when science finds this extracorporeal reality. This is going to be the make or break. We are operating under that perspective right now. So right now, we operate, we believe, we work, we move around under the perception that we are not biology only. We are actually consciousness. We are spirits. We're beings that we're going to be alive after our body stops functioning. And we were alive before our bodies were formed. And that's the perspective that I think soon, maybe we'll never know exactly how long time, but soon science will join us. And this is going to be, a major transition into the way we understand life. But right now, that's the lenses we're going to use right now. Let's run with that. We're not the biology, right? We are spirits. We have this essence, and if we have this essence, even in spiritism, we don't fully understand yet how this spiritual essence that we are evolves. We understand biology, right? We understand pretty well right now. If you think about biology, we think about the initial life on Earth. They keep changing it, but it's about 3.5 to 4.1 billion years ago where we have the first life on Earth, like bacteria. And then we have like 500 million years for the first vertebrate, 165 million years ago for the oldest mammal, right? And modern humans have been around for about 300,000 years. So what the biology tells us is that our evolution, at least from the biological perspective, has been tremendously long, because our bodies are all coming from those initial inhabitants of the planet that were simply bacteria. We don't fully understand how the spiritual essence evolves. Is mostly because science has not even come into it. We have some hints from the Spiritist teachings, but the spirits are pretty vague and telling and giving us details. But chances are that we, as the spirits, we have been evolved for a long time. And if the biology is any guidance, we might have been around for millions of years, if not more, right? So, but where we are right now, it's a very interesting, where we are right now. We are in the human condition. We are in this, we have developed this incredible intelligent species that now lives on Earth. In our modern history, is very short. We have 20,000 years, right? And let me ask you a question, that if we are bound to evolve, right, we are going to be evolving anyway, because if evolution is part of the laws of nature, like gravity, like everything else, we were going to evolve anyway. So then, what would have happened if Jesus, if the spirit that came and had a life among us on Earth, might have decided not to come, or for some reasons might have asked, might postpone it, or for some reason not come and live this experience that he had with us, a life he had among us 2,000 years ago? Would we evolve still? Would God still be God? Yes. Right. I hope you agree with me that we still, all the laws of nature would still be, but we would be without the experience of the gospel. And why Jesus did it? Why this spirit that we think of as a mentor to all of us, our master, our teacher, decided to come and have a life among us 2,000 years ago? Well, that's something to think about. Out of love, we always try to maximize, give the best tools to each other. As a parent, I'm pretty sure you think about giving the best to your children. As a friend, you try to help your friends the best way you can. As a member of the community, you try to create conditions that make those that are around you be in the best shape possible, as a manifestation of simple desire and love. So what Jesus did for us may be exactly that. He gave us a tremendous opportunity, because he gave an example, an opportunity where we came down, lived the same way we live, had the same experience we have right now in the flesh, but he did a few things different. He showed us the way. In everything we have in the gospel right now, if you think about when we say the gospel, are all the notes, are all the description of the stories, the situations that this spirit faced while in the flesh, right? If you read all the books of the gospel in the Bible, the New Testament, it's all the story of this man, the story of his life, in all that's connected to it, and all the consequences of his life, right? And one of the funny things is, despite all the consequences of his life on earth and all the impact it has in our lives to this day, how much Jesus himself wrote to us, how much Jesus he could, instead of he could have focused on writing about his teachings. And as far as we can tell, we don't have a single note that came from himself. Everything was written by others. Have you ever thought about why? He could, right? He could. And we don't know for sure. We would need to ask him to know exactly why he didn't write anything. But we can guess very interesting reasons. First, he focused on the example. He lived with that community at the time, and he lived an intense experience, focused on actions and the way he interacted with every single individual of that community. And if we think about the terms of number of people we have today on Earth, he had to interact with thousands of people, thousands upon thousands in Galilee, right? So, which is sort of limit if you think about. But his interaction with that group of people were tremendously intense in the example. He lived it. And the reason we talk about him, the reason we talk about the gospel, is because all the things he said and all the things that actually he did, and all the notes we have, we believe that he specifically simply lived them. When he said, love thy neighbor as yourself, he must have given the example in his true interaction with every single one. When he said, forgive others their offenses when they offend you, he forgave. When he talked about the humbleness that we need to have in our hearts to live life in a more foolish way, he must have done that exactly thing. He lived. He was the example. That's probably the most supreme teaching of all that we miss to this day. And when I say we miss, is we people that are familiar with the gospel. Yes, it was important that that the gospel was codified, was written, right? It's important that the apostles and although that the Bible was compiled. And for us, it's important that we have the gospel according to Spiritism. The way we study the gospel in Spiritism is based on this tremendous compilation, this work done by Allan Kardec, where he actually picked all the information from all the pieces, from different pieces of the gospel, of the several gospels of the New Testament, and compiled and gave us additional information based on mediumship, right, of what the gospel means. That's amazing. That's beautiful. That's important. But what escapes us sometimes is that the information about the gospel, the talking about the gospel, it's just merely a step. It's not it. It's like when you comment on a sports event. If you watch sports, the game is what really matters. But we can talk about it. In fact, we spend hours and hours, if you like sports, reading and listening to people talk about a game or something. But that's just an accessory. What really matters is the game. What is the essence of thing is the game. And for us, the gospel is living the gospel, manifesting those teachings of the gospel in our life is truly the game. And then people sometimes, especially in our spiritist centers, in our religious environment, and people question, oh, why we can't do this and that, why there's not so many people here and there, why we are not capable of doing so much, we would like to do more, why there's not more people, why there's, why, right? And to me, the answer is so clear because I look at myself. For instance, I talk about the gospel. I'm talking about the gospel to you right now. And I'm describing to you a lot of ideas about the gospel. But I myself have not yet practiced. I'm not capable of bringing that idea of the gospel, the practice, to my life. The great thing, and I thank God every single day, that I already realize that. I'm blessed to realize that I have the model. I just need to move into that direction, right? But I'm not there yet. So what impact lives, what makes a difference, what transforms the world, what really will catapult us as a community, as a society, or as individuals to the fulfillment of the promise of the gospel is when we are capable of living the gospel on a daily basis. And what is this gospel, if you think about? What are the main ideas? It's relentless inclusion. Relentless inclusion. The gospel is inclusive. Includes every single human being. It's absolutely care and attention to others and to myself. What is the major commandment? Love God, which is difficult to explain because God is beyond our understanding, but love thy neighbor as yourself. That's it, right? So to love, you have to care. So we have to care about every single individual around me, in my community, in my family. Every single one. The gospel gives us the perspective of the long run. In fact, the gospel makes no sense if we have a single life. If the life we have ends with the body, the gospel makes no sense. The gospel specifically directs us to the spiritual life. And it makes, once we cross that barrier and we understand that life doesn't end, then the gospel makes absolutely sense. Because it tells us what is to come is unimaginably more important to what's going on right now. That the fact that your life never ends, your life, my life, every single one of us, every single human being on earth has a gift, has a life that won't end for the foreseeable future. In fact, we think it never does, but it loses in the horizon of the infinite, right? But your life never ends. Your life never ends. That per se is the most dramatic change in perspective. Whatever you're going through right now, whatever challenges we're facing in this very moment are absolutely transitory. They're going to pass. Truly. Truly. This is not a joke. All challenges you're facing right now are temporary. They're going to go away. That's what the gospel tells you. And it prepares you, gives you strength, gives you courage to even self-sacrifice in doing good to others, in loving others, even to the extreme of loving those that actually hate you, your enemies, those that actually bring destruction to your life. What a difficult challenge for the vast majority of us. Even to understand and comprehend that teaching hurts the mind. I don't know about you. Hopefully you don't. But for me, it hurts sometimes. How can I understand love to those that do harm to us? Makes no sense in this very moment. Makes no sense in a single life. Because in a single life, you need to care tender of your body. That's all you have. But if you understand that you don't die, that you don't have that boundary, then what matters is your consciousness, is what you have in your spiritual essence. And that changes the perspective of everything, right? And why the life of Jesus was so important? Because he lived that, right? He lived. And it's amazing that when we study the details, which is not going to be for today, but he was punished to the worst type. He was punished with the worst type of punishment available at the time. Crucifixion was reserved for those that were the worst of the worst criminals at the time. And that's what he endured, right? To give us the example. And for us, that is the living gospel that people talk about, that many enlightened beings have gone through so many times. And but so few of us, I mean, it's so difficult. So few of us have been able to manifest in our lives. And when that happens, that's going to be the transition that's going to take us to a new level. We're going to talk about, let's dwell a little bit in some of those teachings, right? And do some examples. Like, for instance, the Good Samaritan. When we talk about love thy neighbor as yourself, right? You can always ask, who is a neighbor, right? And the Good Samaritan is a very beautiful passage of parable, right? And a little that made total sense for those at the time, but for us, we have to do a little adaptation to today, right? You might not be familiar. You might be familiar with the Good Samaritan parable, where Jesus actually talked about the story of a man. When asked about who's a neighbor, a man that told the parable of a man that came down a road and was robbed, right? Was robbed and beaten and wounded, and he was left completely abandoned in the road. And then came first a religious person, a priest, came then a person that was good standing on society and just walked by, and then came the Samaritan, which is, for most people, Samaritans nowadays doesn't mean anything. But a Samaritan is a person. It was actually the sect in Judaism that was considered a heretic. He was kind of the lowest person around. He was agreed upon. Everybody piled on those guys. They were seen are the worst of the worst, let's say, in that community. And he stopped, and he helped, and he put his effort, right, to actually help that individual. How can we translate this for us today? Think about yourself. Think about who you admire. Think about people that you admire. If you're a religious person, maybe, or if you're a spiritist, maybe a spiritist speaker, I don't know, a great spirit. Or if you, wherever, imagine somebody you respect, or somebody that has the same convictions as you. Imagine somebody that has respect in society, right? And now imagine a group of people that you don't like. Imagine a group of people that you don't like. Those people you don't like, right? It can be a different religion. It can be people that do certain jobs that you don't like. I don't know. Fine. And most people struggle with that. Sometimes people, when we do these studies of the gospel, people sometimes say, no, I don't like it. I don't have anybody I don't like. No. Dig in deeper, and you'll find there's a story in our group where we have actually one of our students in our group that he's a very sweet man, and he's very strong physically, and he's very sweet. So in here, when we're doing this kind of conversation, he was saying, I actually don't have anybody I don't like. I don't have anybody that any religion I don't like and everything. And that's true. That was true. Then, of course, we live in California, and we do have a state income tax, right? And which means we pay on top of the federal taxes, we pay income taxes for the state. And I remember that for some reason, somebody made a clerical mistake on his state income taxes and came with a mistake. And he had to work through the red tape to actually correct that. And he was infuriated. He was super mad. And here you go. Those are the people that made you mad. The people that run the income taxes, state income taxes in California. Think about that. Think about those people. What Jesus is telling us, that no matter who that person is, no matter who you think it's bad, if that person helps and does so, do good to his or her neighbor, they are in the gospel. They are practicing the gospel. No matter who you are, if you practice the gospel, you are in the gospel. You are a brother or sister. Is there anything more inclusive than that? Anyone, in any sect, in any belief, in any tract of society, in any sort of form you can possibly classify a human being, if you love, if you do the best for your neighbor, you are doing the gospel. You might not even know about the gospel. You may not be aware of it. You may be completely unaware of Jesus. I don't know. Maybe there's some people that don't even know about Jesus, although it's difficult on earth, right? But you are doing the gospel. That's what the Samaritan parable exactly tells. Those are the words that people in that time understood. That's what the gospel is. It's a way of life. It's what you do, not what you believe. Let's go for another one. Let's think about chapter 10 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. How many times shall I forgive? Forgiveness. We still think forgiveness as something we grant to others, right? The vast majority of us, when we think about forgiveness, we think about something we grant to somebody else. And Jesus told us, how many times shall I forgive? 7 times 70. And again, still in modern society, when we think about 7 times 70, it sounds like a small number. But remember, 2,000 years ago, math was not widespread among the community. 7 has a Kabbalistic meaning. 7 times 7, it's kind of the equivalent today as a Google. A number with 500 zeros, 1 with 500 zeros to the right. It's a gigantic number. It has the meaning of the time. So in a sense, you forgive as many times you have to forgive. But why? Why should I forgive? When we think about forgiveness, we tend to think, if you guys are like me, you tend to think about something you give to others. Oh, they did something to harm me. They did something to make my life worse. And I'm not questioning that. This is a typical experience on earth, right? It's a typical experience. We're all going to go through a certain point in our life where somebody or some people will do something to harm us, one way or another, consciously or unconsciously. It's going to happen. It's an experience bound to happen on earth. And then that experience permeates, comes to our minds and takes over. And when we check the gospel, the teachings of Jesus are radical on forgiveness. And when we see that, when we hear that, many people think about forgiveness as something I give to others. And yet, it couldn't be more different. If you analyze what forgiveness does to us, if you dwell on the feeling, if you pay attention to what goes on with you when you don't forgive, you will see, you notice that the person that suffers, the person that doesn't forgive, is the one that suffers. When you don't forgive, you are in chains. Your consciousness, your mind is chained to that event. You chain yourself. It's part of your mind. It's part of yourself. And when you forgive, you unchain yourself. Forgiveness is something we give to ourselves. When I forgive, I free myself from that experience. I unchain myself from that pain. It's totally different. We're not saying, of course, that you should allow people to do destructive things. No, that's not the case. That's why we have laws, we have rules, and we have limitations. And we say no. No is a perfect good word. And we get to know people, and we understand their limitations, and we deal with them appropriately. But forgiveness is an emotion that's inside of you. Is when you allow yourself, you allow that being to do those things, right? Because that's where they are in their mindset. And you don't let whatever action they took that harmed you to dwell and to exist in your own life, in your own mind. And we have the expression in the gospel, so well captured in the gospels, of Jesus through the pain and through the suffering of the execution that was the most inhumane at the time, and forgiven all of us as the ultimate example of forgiveness. If Jesus was as big as we think he was, and all the sacrifices he took to have a life among us, going through the same pains we actually go, and still be treated as we treated him. What an example. But the core of the teaching is that he forgave us because he let go. He didn't allow our destruction to dwell on his mind. So when you forgive, you allow yourself free from the pain and destruction that was brought to you by those you love, or those you have to share the sins. That's another essence of the gospel. And if you were like me, right? A quick story. There's Divaldo Franco tells a story, very interesting, and I'm going to tell with my words, which is going to be much worse, but at least gives the idea of an ancient Jewish story where it was this young disciple, right, that was in a hurry to understand the teachings of the scriptures, right? And he posed a challenge to all the masters, all those that he sought for teachings. He would pose a challenge to them and say, Master, I want you to teach me all there is in the scriptures while I stand in 1 feet. And of course, that's most teachers thought as an offensive, as we would take today. Is like, like, who is this, young popo that comes and, poses a challenge like that, right? But it's not different from what we have today, right? So I want quick. I want to learn everything. And then eventually he found one of the masters of antiquity, and he posed a challenge to him again. So, Master, I'll follow you if you tell me all there is to know about the scriptures and the teachings while I stand in 1 feet. And then the wise man said, okay, take the position, take the step. He did. A few moments later, the master looked at him and said, love. And then that's kind of stunned a little bit the disciple, right? Is that it? What do you mean? That's it? Love. Oh, I don't understand. Okay, so then if you don't understand, here are the scriptures, here are the teachings, here, and that's why we have all the things coming up right now. That's what, in essence, this captured pretty much the essence of the teachings of the gospel, if you think about. But chapter 17 of the gospel according to Spiritism, where Kardec compiled the Be Perfect. If you struggle with the gospel, if those ideas, if you're like me and you have to digest a little bit better, there are the recipes of what a good person is. And some people tell us, like, sometimes, I'm okay, I know everything there is to know. I'm okay, I'm fine. Be careful, you might not have started the voyage yet. But chapter 17 in the gospel, according to Spiritism, Be Perfect, has a very good description of what a good person is. Let's read it. Let's go through it. The consequences of bringing the gospel to our life, how we treat others, how we interact with each other, how we deal with the place, with the people that God actually placed us. And by the way, every single one of us is right now exactly where we're supposed to be for our spiritual growth, right? We have the people around us, we have the situations around us that are here to make us grow spiritually, right? And the goal of the gospel is just to optimize that process, to make it faster, to make us suffer less, to make us go through these teachings and simply make the most out of it, out of love. And it's kind of what I wanted to give you guys in terms of a perspective of the gospel. That's kind of it, right? And I think we have a format right now where we do have a little bit of interaction, right? So in this, where we have, I don't know, Gloss, if we have any questions coming through the pipeline.
Of course we have. Oh my God. And if you allow me to make a very interesting comment, when you what you mentioned about not so much Jesus exemplified, right? He did not write about the gospel, and he exemplified. And I think that the whole scenario of being crucified, right? Because you had to be a real bad criminal. So crucifixion was for criminals, for dissidents, for political, you name it. And it's kind of like an interesting, it's the best example, right? So I think it was very appropriate. Yeah, we have some very interesting questions that we like to hear from you. So check out this one here. I understand from Humberto de Campos and Emmanuel, those two spirits, that there are lots of study groups in the spiritual spheres, closer and much higher than the earth. So don't you think that we will continue to keep receiving teachings of the gospel suited to moral and intellectual progress of humanity for centuries and even millennia, the same way we today were granted with the Spiritist revelation? That is a very interesting question.
That's an amazing question. That's a very advanced question. In a sense, let me put this in perspective. This is what is to come. For the vast majority of us, I mean, if you think about Earth, many people still don't even believe yet that humans are beyond the flesh. So we still struggle right now to to accept the fact that humans are not the body only, right? So if you go to your physician and talk about, if you go to your physician right now and visit it and say you're sick and you start talking about your soul, you're not going to get that. You're going to get that eye like, well, he's kind of. So we are still struggling to the very basic principles of spirituality, which is fundamental understanding that life doesn't end with the body. But once we make that, there's a whole horizon. There's a whole universe that will open up for us. And we spiritists, in a way, we have a little bit of an opening to that right now. And that's why the value of spiritism is it's to prepare us right now. Although the mainstream understanding of society is not there yet, we get to do this right now. And exactly what the question is exactly that. We only have a very small portion of the life of Jesus available to us. All right. This is something that it blows my mind when we think about the 33 years, the 30-something years that he spent on earth. They probably have a tremendous amount of examples that came through all that time, in all circumstances, in all situations that he gave the example. But it's so overwhelming right now that I avoid even talking about that, because I totally agree. We're going to have millennia ahead. And some of us, I think if you, I mean, in the spiritual realm, like many, many years from now, when we're on the other side and we want to study one life, 1 week of the life of Jesus, it's probably going to be an overwhelming experience. Because think about ourselves and how many things happen in our daily life, how many situations. Yesterday, for instance, I was working with my little one in the kitchen, and he broke a glass. Right, he was just taking dishes out of the dishwasher, and he broke a glass. And I noticed that he looked at me to see if I was mad. And thanks God, I'm not mad for this kind of things right now. But then I realized, oh my goodness, maybe I would have reacted much worse before. I would have been mad with him because he broke a glass. And a child, as you know, 13 years old, they're stumbled. They're still growing. Their muscles are still adjusting, right? And you see, how many of those little things every single one of us goes every day, in every moment, in every interaction, in every way we deal with each other. And how many times we fail, and how many times we react in ways that are completely inappropriate. So, and we're not even begun the study of Jesus yet, life. I think the study of Jesus' life will happen, I agree, in the future, when we actually have the open doors between spirituality and us, and understand that in a few years, which we don't know, maybe 10, maybe 100, maybe 200, but soon, science will open up the gates of the understanding of the afterlife, and that will create a whole universe of opportunities for us in terms of understanding of the true life. It's coming.
Amazing. That's I can hardly wait to get that level, that more advanced level. There'll be more questions. Kirsten, very interesting question. It's hard to wrap one's mind around forgiveness when you are in the middle of the struggle. Very interesting. Suggestions as to what to do when emotions are high. Very appropriate.
I'm in the same boat. That's the beauty. That's the beauty of Spiritism. I feel so comfortable coming here and talking to you guys because of Spiritism, we're brothers. We're brothers and sisters struggling together, right? I have the same challenge. And it's amazing. I think the good thing is we already accept. We already see the light in the end of the tunnel, right? Because if forgiveness is something that you already can work with, the wheels are spinning, and we are engaged in this process of transforming ourselves into something different. And that's the most important thing. The most important thing is to have the wheels spinning because we're moving, right? We are understanding the forgiveness. We're understanding the concept. We're understanding the need for that. The manifestation of that, it's difficult. What the higher spirits say in many cases, that it's simple. It's just a choices of thing. But hey, they already achieved that. We are in the heat of the battle right now. We are in the heat of the battle right now. And there's no one size fits all. There's no one size fits all in terms of how we approach every single situation. And despite that, we are all facing similar challenges. They are all unique. We're all learning to forgive on Earth. Earth is a place where you have to learn to forgive. It's part of is the curriculum. It's like it's the school that if you enroll on Earth, and if you come for Earth for a life in here, you will have to forgive, because it's absolutely a brutal space in terms of the lack of awareness of one another, and still a lot of our brothers and sisters, and sometimes even consciously and unconsciously, do a lot of harm, and even ourselves sometimes. How many times we cause harm to others even without being aware, right? And so there's no one size fits all solution. What there is the continuous connection with the divine, right? Prayer, the connection, and the awareness that will guide you. Because I'm not big on terms of techniques, and because I know that the techniques will work depending on the situation of the individual, and we should find it all available, right? But I'm more what really makes me sure that we're moving is when we are aware of it. And if you are aware of the need for forgiveness, it's amazing. You're already engaged. You are doing already. Your wheels are spinning. You're already working on that. That's amazing.
Yeah. It is funny, right? Sometimes we're so hard on ourselves, and to your point, I mean, we got to at least recognize that the wheels are spinning. At least we understand that there's a need, So that is still a progress. Yeah. More questions, more. So Susanna RESEM, how to practice the gospel in times like today, with a global pandemic when many are feeling so vulnerable and fragile? What is the message that COVID brings us from a gospel perspective? That is very appropriate, very, very interesting question.
Exactly, and if you think about this question is close to my heart, in a sense that if you think about the gospel is needed more today than when in times of calm. if you think about, if everything is going well, and that's, I don't know about you, but that's my problem. If everything's going well in my life, and this is a terrible, I'm going to say something that's terrible, but I already discovered that by paying attention to myself and learning. If everything is going good in my life, everything's okay, if I have all resources I need, if everything is working exactly the way I want, I become sloppy. It's terrible to say that. I wish I was not like that. But I tend to be complacent. I tend to be pay less attention to my spiritual growth. I have had long swaths of my life where things were working so well for me that I even afforded to not look at spirituality at all. And I look back at those times, although for people around me, they would say, oh my goodness, you were in such a good shape, right? You were doing so well. You were so successful. And now I look at myself and I look, no, I was not. My mind was in a pretty bad place. And it's so sad, but it's the reality that challenges sometimes have a purpose. The spiritual growth sometimes comes at the moments of difficulty, at the moments of tragedy, and we're right now in at the tick, in one of probably most difficult challenges as a community we have had in this planet, right? Not just because of the COVID, but the consequences in the political environment and the hate and all the ideas that are coming back of separation, destruction, right? It's a crucial moment, and we don't know how far we are into this thing, right? We might still need to live with this for a long time, but be aware that the reason those things are coming for us is because we need to improve. We still have a lot of work to do in our society as a planet. We still have tremendous challenges. We have tremendous technology. We have tremendous resources available to us, but we still have people in 2021 that face hunger, face the deprivations, limitations of the most basic freedoms and resources for life. In a planet with almost 8 billion people, all the billions of spirits incarnate, we still have tremendous injustice. We have tremendous suffering, right? So that's why, in a way, all those experiences will propel us. And the gospel is truly the tool to deal with those things in a productive way, right? Should intensify, should make us be more aware of our situations. And it's a clear invitation. Of course, can we solve the problems globally? Can we be a global solution for the problem? Maybe not. But we are all, every single one of us, by bringing the teachings of the gospel to our life, we are impacting our community. And that's amazing, right? We don't need to save the world. We need to save the world we were putting in, the world we have access as well. Let's not worry about sometimes the big picture. Sometimes it's okay to just turn off the TV, right, and not worry about things we don't have control, and just play a little bit with our kids, right? Just talk to them about what's going on, right? And engage with my community, with my neighbor, with my friend, with my family, and see what they're suffering, and not look so much into the situations that are so globally attacking us, but we don't have maybe sometimes control of, right?
It's interesting. Yeah, we do what we can, right? We do what's within our span of control. And if that means just washing our hands and putting on a mask so we can protect our community, to your point, right? Let's do that. Interesting. COVID has brought, to your point also, so many things that we took for granted, as things as simple as having coffee with our coworkers, being able to visit our relatives overseas. It's very interesting. These times of these challenging times. More questions. So Julia Andrade Rocha, how do we spread the gospel while respecting those who cannot accept the material doctrines built around it? For instance, those traumatized by the church or those who ascribe to different religions. That's very interesting.
So thankful to Julia for this question, because this is exactly the question. That's the thing. That's exactly the point. We practice the gospel on ourselves. That's exactly the key. The gospel is not the manifestation of the information. Like, for instance, what I did today, we didn't know, and we do in religions, with our books, is we talk about the information, the details about the gospel, right? The parables of Jesus, the teachings, the examples, and we talk about it. That's the information. But when we say practice the gospel, what the gospel truly is when when it manifests in my life, when it manifests in the way I do. That's the true essence of the gospel, right? And sometimes we worry about if you believe, you don't believe, if you understand, if you don't understand, right? And sometimes even people like us, that if you're familiar with your religion, if you're happy with your religion or your philosophy, you try to bring people to that understanding, that ideology, but that's all superficial. What truly makes a difference is when you live the gospel. Like, for instance, in your interaction with those people, right? Are we forgiving them? Are we spending time with them? Are we being relentless inclusive? Do we care about them? Do we care about those people? Do we care? Do we spend time with them? Do we see? Is the manifestation of love, that's what the true gospel is. And when you do that, when we finally manage to do that, I'm not there yet, but when we finally manage to do that, we are spreading the gospel, even without knowing. If you see those that have achieved, enlightenment, in a sense that they start, manifesting this love for others in their own life, they don't know. In many cases, they don't even know they're manifesting the gospel. If you ask, they no, I'm not. And yet they are, because they are living it. Is living it, not talking about it. One of the major traps we have is sometimes we think about talking about the gospel is living the gospel. It's not. It's like a game. It's like I like that analogy about a sports game. If you like to watch a game, you can talk about the game as much as you want, and we love it, right? If you like soccer, if you're watching this and you like soccer, how much time we spend talking about soccer game, right? But that's not the game. The game is what was played in the field. The game is actually what happened over there. And when we talk about the gospel, this is the major step. This is the major understanding that I'm new to. I'm starting to really internalize in myself and trying to work on that. But I'm far from that, which is the gospel truly is not talk about the gospel. The gospel is living it in my daily life, in my expressions of what I do every single moment, every single interaction with my partner, with my family, with all the people, my co-workers. Fundamentally is my interaction with others. Do I care about them and me? That's the gospel. That's the manifestation of the gospel.
Very interesting, demonstrated by our example, going back to Jesus, right? Not so much writing, but actually practicing. More questions coming up. Can we live the gospel every day while also taking care of our mundane challenges, like paying bills, driving in heavy traffic, etc.? That's a good question.
Exactly. That's of course, we take steps, right? We take steps. And that's why I like to mention again the chapter 17 of To Be Perfect, where Kardec compiled the characteristics of a good person and then a good spirit or a good Christian, which is the same, right? That's universal. We are here engaged in a transformation. The vast majority of us might be way behind still in manifesting those things in our life. And of course, there's no miracle. There's no flip a switch and I'm living the gospel. At least not for me. I don't know. Maybe somebody might have experienced that. I struggle. And what we do is we focus on something, on a few things at a time, right? For instance, check in your own consciousness, in your own mind, and this takes a little bit of self-analysis, right? To understand what is the thing that's more complicated with you right now that you should work. And your consciousness will tell you, because the consciousness comes from this direct connection with God. It will tell you. Like, for instance, each person will have a different need. For instance, patience. Some people have a tremendous challenge of being patient, right? It's one of the major challenges. Is they lose patience and they do things that are unwise in their relationships because they struggle with patience. There you go, right? So then patience is going to be the area where you're going to work on, right? So you're going to develop techniques to maybe calm your mind, move you into a better place, try to make decisions without exacerbation. So all those things, and you're going to start working on that, right? And that's, again, gets the wheels to spin and starts us moving right into that direction, because we have ancient habits, and that's the challenge we have as well. Even when we absolutely connect and click with the gospel, let's say the information about the gospel reaches your heart and your mind and you're totally connected with it. Let's say because we are spirits and we have lived for so long, we have a lot of habits, we have a lot of things that have been ingrained in us in the past, and they don't die easy. Habits don't die easy, right? That's why we should pay so much attention on what kind of habits we develop, right? So if my lack of patience, for instance, is something that become a habit, right? I'll have to work it out little by little by engaging with it, by transforming myself, and this is what is going to happen to all of us. We will have to work, probably one at a time or a few at a time, and start manifesting our teachings little by little, right? Just being patient, it's a tremendous step. If I know I struggle with that, if I know I struggle with jealousy, if I know I struggle with all sorts of difficulties, I know some of bad habits that I want to change because they're disturbing me. To be honest, I have diagnosed so many of my problems already. So what I'm doing right now is trying to work on them, right? And as you start making your inner trip, right, you find things that you want to change, right? But this is an inner process. Again, so this is not a judgmental process. This is not supposed to happen in the outside. It's not people telling you what you're supposed to do. This is your inner voyage. This is your trip. Is you, every single one of us, choosing to manifest the gospel in our life, choosing to manifest those teachings in our life as we go.
Yeah, one step at a time, like you mentioned before, stay in movement, and so they have the old saying, right? You don't lose your patience. You didn't have patience to begin with.
Exactly. That's a good catch.
So speaking of which, does God place our so-called enemies in our lives to punish us or to make us become better Christians?
Well, we don't really. The idea of punishment is something that we're moving away from it as we understand a loving God a little better. Of course, the idea of punishment is ingrained in our minds because when we had that perspective of God that was human, more like moody, that would make sense, because that's what we do sometimes to each other. We punish each other, right? And as we evolve spiritually, we understand that God is much more this platform, is this love and incredible thing that we cannot understand. We don't understand. It's not human, and we won't understand for a long time because it transcends anything we can possibly use words for, right? But it's incredible. Is the primary cause of all things. The supreme intelligence is what we get in the Spirit's book, and it's amazing. And what happens is he creates this platform, this universe. It's full of laws, full of rules that seem to be placed in there because God loves us. And when we have enemies in our life, it's a natural consequence of our state of mind. We disagree. We fundamentally disagree in our perspectives. If you think your whole family, think even the people you love, right? look at how many different thoughts you have among the people you love. I mean, we think differently. We see things differently. We to cheer for different soccer teams. We have different political views. We have different perspectives on our work. We disagree. We are, every single one of us is a unique universe, right? So an enemy surge, the concept of an enemy kind of manifests when we don't know how to deal with those differences, and we start engaging in the old, destruction game of each other, right? That's almost unavoidable on Earth, and there's so many things that we can learn from those experiences, right? The first one, probably the most important, is don't take it personally. This person is not truly your enemy. It's not truly your enemy, because fundamentally we're all children of God. There's a thought process that's manifesting right there that's creating this antagonism. It's not real. It's just there's a situation that's bringing us together, right? That simple mindset sometimes helps a lot to solve the problem, right? When we interact with other people, I'm starting to get better at catching that, but it was horrible to me as well. When people attack you personally, like say that you are this or you are that, you are this, you're such a person. And in most circumstances, if you think a little bit, you understand that the person wants something else, right? Is when my kids, if I sometimes I don't give them what they want, like for instance, if they would eat ice cream all day long, if we let them, right? Is if I just tell them, no, it's enough, no ice cream, I become the worst dad in the world. We don't take that seriously, because we understand that the reason they're saying that is just because you are limiting something they may like to do, because there's a limitation for that. And it's a good thing, right? You're doing, because if they eat whatever they want all the time, maybe sometimes they're gonna face health consequences, right? With our children, it's more clear, because we know them. But when you have an enemy as another adult or another person, it's very similar process, right? Usually there's something that they want from you, even maybe your money. They want your money, or they want your business. They want something from you. And the way they're doing it is by attacking you, right? Sometimes just that awareness is already a tremendous help in dealing with the situation, right? And then, we're going to deal with those situations anyway, but the challenge is to not allow those relationships, those thoughts of destruction, to dwell in our minds. Because if you allow it, it take over. So how many times something was done to us, or we engage in those disputes and things, and that took over and we became that. If you allow your mind to be polluted, it can consume you completely, and that's extremely serious. Because it's way more serious than losing money, because that means losing your peace of mind, losing your consciousness, and that doesn't die with the body. That's you, truly. If we allow our minds to be taken over by others, by destructive forces, that doesn't end with the flesh, because that's ingrained. It's something I accept. So this is very dangerous, and it's something we should be pretty much aware of.
It is interesting, right? We cannot control what other people tell us, say to us, or even do to us, but we can always control our own attitude and how we see the different events.
Perfect. Absolutely.
One last question for us. From Julia again. How do we approach parts of the gospel that tell us what not to do, such as divination, speaking to the dead? How do we reconcile that with those who view mediumship as being demonic? Excellent question.
Right. Well, that's a good one, right? So there's a lot to unwrap here. The not to do, again, so remember, when you think about the Bible as a whole, there's the Old Testament and New Testament. And the Old Testament is pretty much imperative, right, in terms of what to do and not to do. The New Testament's maybe a little less, right? We start to having this as we evolve. You understand? As we mature spiritually as well, we become more responsible for our own actions, and we become less children spiritually. It's like your kids. I mean, when they're young, you have to tell them not to, don't touch this, don't touch that, right? As they become older, right, and mature, we start telling them why you don't touch this, why you don't touch that, right? And eventually, when they mature, they do by themselves. They figure out what's good and what's bad for them. This is part of our voyage as a community, as well as a planet, as a community of humans in this planet, part of the universe, right? As we evolve, we become more capable of doing with those things. But specifically the mediumship part, the part of the mediumship, first the mediumship is understood in the gospel. It's part of in the Bible. It's understood that it exists, right? And if you think about even today, mediumship is not accepted a mainstream part of society. But what are the true, why people use, or how people use mediumship? It's still very complicated. It's still, a lot of people still use mediumship as a fantastic thing, as a phenomenon, or as a way of fortune telling. There's a lot of uses of mediumship that create lots of complications, right? And to a certain degree, that was the prevention that was embedded in the Bible, because they wanted to avoid that. And you know how complicated it is when a spirit tells you to do something, right? When a medium comes to you and tells you you're supposed to do something, that has a tremendous weight on many people. Or you start working and getting things done, material things. And in a way, that was sort of the goal. Oh, let's close the door because it's not being properly used. Same thing, we can say same thing with internet, right? We have amazing things on the internet, but we have horrible things as well, right? So the problem is, can we forbid the internet? Maybe we can. Even the internet can be forbidden, maybe, because it's technical. But mediumship cannot. It's part of nature, right? So what we are doing right now, and I think one of the strongest components of the Spiritist movement is to bring the awareness of mediumship. Kardec wrote greatly in the Medium's book, The Dangers of Mediumship. You know, and it's the perils, the situations that may pose challenge, and the need for a tremendous study and understanding before you practice, right? So that's what we have to do. We have to develop healthy mediumship, and it's the same way as the gospel. If you're a medium and you have a balanced life, you're a beacon to mediumship in your community, because people look at you and say, oh, she's a medium. She's a good person. She manifests the gospel. She's, amazing. But if we are mediums and we're all unbalanced, we're suffering, we're carrying our pain, we're doing channeling and people look at us and say, oh my God, she's a medium. Poor her, because she's suffering so much. You understand where things are going? Two, mediumship is not something that is a spiritist. It's part of nature. It's something as natural as electricity or as gravity, right? But what we have to do to achieve, and we're not there yet, I think we're far from that, is to use mediumship in a balanced way. Hopefully we're spinning the wheels. Hopefully we're moving into that direction.
So pretty much know that that there's a context, right, for that particular language and wording that is in the Old Testament. And to your point, capture the message, which is treat mediumship with respect. So that's a very interesting answer. Anisio, thank you so very much for this awesome conversation. So we'd like you to do any final closing comments, and please say our final prayer as well.
Yeah, so final comment, I think we're all in this journey together, all right? This is our journey, right? We're all struggling with this one way or another, but I think we're going to see it through. And that's what Jesus told us. The most beautiful thing is not a single one of my sheep will be lost. That's one of the most amazing loving compassions. We're going to make it. The question is when. And with that in mind, let's say a few words to be thankful. And let's be thankful. Mother, Father God, Divine Creator, Thank you very much for this opportunity, for this group of spirits, a group of people that actually engage in the work of goodness, for all the opportunities we have, especially the opportunity of being in the flesh once again, and most important, being aware of your presence, of your light in our lives. Thank you very much, Divine Creator, for allowing us to have Jesus in our lives. Master Jesus, what can we say to you? If not from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for being with us, for staying with us, and for guiding us through this difficult time in our evolution as we learn to spiritualize. Thank you very much, and we hope God bless all of us today and always. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ANISIO. Thank you everybody for being with us, and please continue to be with us in our future lives with the Spiritist, U.S. Spiritist Federation. Always so many great teachings like the ones we had today. Everybody have a great rest of the weekend and a blessed week.